Welcome. We are continuing our study of the Bhagavad Gita. We will start verse 31 onwards, and you will find this class fascinating. In case you have ever been confused about what is your swan song, besides picking up cues from our culture and what our parents tell us or what others tell us, what we should be doing in our day-to-day life. If you've ever had question marks, then today's class is on Swadharma. What is your dharma? Dharma can be defined as, it's called duty, and it has many meanings. So one of the meanings is it's the essence of something. For example, the essence of fire is heat. So without heat, there cannot be any fire. So what is your Swadharma, which makes you uniquely you? So we shall be exploring that. And before that, as is our tradition, human teachers who are in body, remember the teachers who have dropped their body, but they continue to remain as part of Atman, the eternal being, and guide us. And we remember Narayana, who is the avatar of Brahman. Brahman comes from the root word Bri, which means the ultimate reality. So there is a formless, nameless, ultimate reality, which we can remember as Narayana. Narayana means one who is dwelling in all beings. That is what Narayana means. So Narayana is not the name of what we think maybe a proper noun is really symbolic of a metaphysical reality that makes us go beyond the everyday understanding of things. So, jo nar nar mein vyapt hai, wo Narayan hai. The one who is dwelling in each and every being is Narayana. So we shall begin. Om Narayana Samarambha Vyasa Shankara Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. We acknowledge that ultimate reality that dwells in every heart. That is the ultimate teacher. We acknowledge Vyasacharya, Shankaracharya, and we acknowledge Asmadacharya, our immediate teachers, Bade Baba, Baba. And we acknowledge that great tradition where somebody agreed to share with us the knowledge from a generosity of their heart. This chain of generosity has been continuing. And it is rightly said that when a seeker is truly ready to receive knowledge, then the teacher appears. And that teacher appears not for money, not for anything else, but from the sheer love of that supreme reality, guiding that teacher to be present. And that parampara, that tradition, we bow to it, because of which we have the Bhagavad Gita amidst us today, even though it was spoken some 10,000 years ago on earth time. Now let us bow to Bhagavad Gita, who we consider as an incarnation of the Divine Mother. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayena Swayam Vyasena gratitam purana muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaita Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayanim Amba Tvamanusandadhami Bhagavata Bhavatveshanim Shri Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. At this point, no matter who be your guru or whether you have a guru or not, we recognize Krishna as the teacher of the great teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, as the guru of this world. Because he did not teach for one kind of people who look a certain way, talk a certain way, behave a certain way. He taught for all times, all people, and anyone who is ready to be sorrow-free. Really, that is the whole purpose of the Upanishads, and that is the purpose of Gita Upanishad, which is an essence of the 108 Upanishads. If you have not studied the Upanishads, then if you have received the Bhagavad Gita, then you can consider that you have gone through all the Upanishads. And if you have gone through chapter 2, then you can consider that you have gone through all the entire Bhagavad Gita. So some of you can drop off right after we end chapter 2. Traditional teachers always like students to drop off. Modern teachers like to collect students. The reason for that is that this is a study, and you shall understand today why I do that. It's not new. I keep doing that. I keep giving you incentives to leave the studies, because be kind to yourself, says Krishna. And he says, be honest and genuine to what is really your essence. Don't study Gita just because it's available. Don't do anything just because it's a trend, because it's available, because your friend is doing it. You should do anything in life based upon your swadharma. And so therefore, there are some people whose swadharma is to study the scripture and change their entire being, change the paradigm of their existence. And for others, that very scripture can become a cause of sorrow and difficulty, because it brings up so much knowledge that it's hard to digest, it's hard to grow. So this is a very important study actually in a Gurukulam. And though I told you in my little note that we will be studying from verse 31 to 37, we will actually be covering only verse 31 to 33 in chapter 2. And then I'm going to actually have to jump all the way to the last chapter, believe it or not, to chapter 18. And we are going to look at verses 41 to about 45 in the last chapter. And surprised? That's how teachings are done. The reason is that, especially because nowadays, even in India, this has to be done, because some of the teaching is, Bhagavad Gita was not taught in isolation. Bhagavad Gita was taught with a background of certain prakaran or supplementary text having been taught before, such as Tattvabodh, etc., which not many of you have gone through. Also, there was an ongoing dialogue that was happening for many years. And so there was some context that every student had, which some of you will not have at all. And some of you may have, but you will benefit from a review. So that's why, to be able to even explain to you what I'm trying to say about Swadharma, we actually need to move to the 18th chapter and then come back to the second chapter. So we're going to do that. So coming back to the Bhagavad Gita, we're excited. We have just completed Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga, which is the teaching of the highest philosophy. That, as you know, the context is that we have Arjuna, He's a soldier, he's a brave person. And he had debated for 14 years to go to war against a narcissistic, evil, confirmed liability on the universe. If he was allowed to take over the throne of Hastinapur, then he would cause widespread destruction. He would cause the extinction of the world, probably. He was somebody who had to be contained and not allowed to go on the throne. And all kinds of peaceful ventures, because non-violence is our dharma, had been thwarted by Duryodhana, the evil one. So Arjuna had to go to war. Arjuna had to he had been to many other battles, and he should have. He should just move forward with the intention. But as you know, many of you know that he saw among hundreds of thousands of soldiers, he cited two people, his grandfather and his teacher of archery. And he suddenly lost his nerve. He's like, if I'm going to kill, the collateral damages that I might end up, or my grandfather and my teacher might die, or I might end up having to kill them for my arrow. And I can't deal with them because I love them. I've played on their lap. I'm attached to them. And that's right. Yes, that's very nice, very mushy, very sentimental. How beautiful. But, I studied from my grandfather, and I sometimes put myself in the position of Arjuna, and I wonder, if my grandfather had, after deliberation, joined an army of evildoers, what should have been my relationship with him? Should I be worshipping him? Should I be offering this selfless service to him year after year, day after day? And what should be should I revisit my relationship with my grandfather? Or should I just go from that sentimental blood relationship? Contracts have to change based upon a larger day-to-day pragmatic understanding. And Arjuna owed this not only to his family, because he had suffered at the hands of his evil cousin, but the evil cousin was a very aggressive, tyrannical, villain kind of person in history. Sorry, those glamorous words, bad words are not coming to my mind, but you get it. The ultimate, what is it called? The ultimate, I don't know. The ultimate, yeah, like an unworthy soul. That's all I can say. Really unworthy. And why nonviolence is our dharma. In very extreme and rare conditions, when violence or force is required to protect dharma, then only the Veda allows violence. For example, a doctor has to do something violent and do surgery. So that's a kind of violence. Sometimes there can be death in the process of surgery, not intentional. Can happen. But the doctor has to do what they have to do. The cops have to do what they have to do to protect us. The army has to do what they have to do. So, this is the difference between Veda, which was actually being taught to householders. Please pay attention here. The Guru Krishna was himself a king of Mathura and a much married man, many wives. That was the trend back then. And we all know his passionate and divine romance with Radha. In fact, his girlfriend's name is taken first, Radha Krishna, and then his name. So he was a passionate being, and he showed us all kind of ideals, including how to have romance with Krishna. So all the women were in love with him. So they were called gopis, and all the men were also called gopis. People had when they saw little Krishna, 5-year-old or 2-year-old or 20-year-old, everybody had a crush on him. Can you imagine God walking around with his flute and his, and a peacock feather in his curly hair, and he's Narayana. He's the being who dwells in every heart. So how cannot every heart just gasp and experience that he's only living for me? So, he was a householder. And even Arjuna had, I believe, 2 wives, if I remember. And Because back then in the Hindu society, if one had the wherewithal to have more than one wife, mostly the royalty, then they were allowed that. And it was not illegal or anything. And there was a dharma around being a wife or a husband. So you had to keep that up, but you could have that. And, there were householders talking. And so you can't teach an absolute value. The value has to be taught based on our day-to-day world. And in our day-to-day world, the absolute value was that 99% of the time, nonviolence has to be upheld. But 1% of the time, probably violence may be required, especially if you are what is known as a kshatriya or a soldier, because you have taken the vow to protect us. We depend upon you. A spiritual teacher doesn't have to go and kill someone. A farmer doesn't have to do that. But a soldier, yeah. Like right now, I'm depending upon, the law and order keepers in my city so that I can do this class for you. I depend on, people who are protecting my border. So this is a reality, and this was a reality back then too. I'm expecting the person who cleans my pool to come and clean the pool. I'm expecting, the person who takes potatoes from the farm in Idaho to the farmer's market where I go to, or to the Trader Joe's to do what they do. So we're all expecting duties to be fulfilled so that we can have a harmonious experience. And so Lord Krishna, the teacher, wants to tell Arjuna, look, you can't be feeling sentimental. This is a wrong time to feel sentimental. Sentiment is great, attachment is great, compassion is great, but this is the wrong time. So first he explained amazing things about how your teacher and your grandfather, even if they are killed, they won't really die, because their Atman, or their true being, is what? Nitya, it is eternal. And, the body merely changes clothes. So just do your duty, do what you have to do. So we saw many, many beautiful verses around that. But now this is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita, and I can so relate to him, because now I have to counsel my Arjunas. So sometimes I give a very profound philosophy, and then I see that they're not probably there yet, because Arjuna didn't say, okay, got it. I think I'm just going to go back and do my duty. In fact, Arjuna was a profoundly dull student, like me, like you. When humanity needs 650 plus verses from the teacher to get it. But if you don't get it in 650 verses, then I'll be worried about you. But otherwise, give yourself the luxury of 650 verses, because our Arjuna, who is a prototype of an average human being, who has abilities, gets confused, then that's great. So now, instead of teaching the highest philosophy, the teacher brings himself down, and for 3 verses, from 31 to 33, he actually reminds him of his dharmic contracts. Of his dharma can be explained as dharayante iti dharmaha, which means that which upholds you and society. There are certain unspoken, invisible contracts, such as a mother has a contract to her child to protect that child against physical violence, sexual abuse, emotional damage. And if the mother does not do her needful, or the father, then the mother can explain why she didn't do it, and probably there may be reasons, but she may experience her conscience will prick her. So what is this conscience? So let me explain this. Our ego, if you remember my class on the ego series, I taught 5-6 classes on ego. I explained how our ego is split. And in today's Hamsa magazine also, we have the article on ego that you can review. So you have, the ego is split. And one part of it's a game, it's a theater, a divine theater. One part of your ego, your worldly identity, chases this and that and gets confused. Another part of your ego, the hidden part, most of us, in some people it gets kind of covered, but in most of us, until it gets covered, we don't become a hardcore criminal. But if it's not covered so much with ignorance and lust and other things, then what happens is it acts as the ambassador of the spiritual truth. So it becomes our conscience. So do you remember? Do you know about Lady Macbeth from Shakespearean play Macbeth? And the husband and wife plotted to kill the king so that he could take over. Her husband could become the king. It was a coup. But then her conscience pricked her, so she kept washing her hands. She developed a psychosomatic disorder. So what happens is our conscience pricks us. So dharma is not something enforced from outside. The thing is that if my dog does not listen, one day he listens, one day he doesn't listen. You all get updates about Noddy, the Labradoodle. He doesn't have a conscience because he's not moral or immoral, he's amoral. But human beings have evolved. We are in an evolutionary cycle and we have developed a morality. We have developed an inherent sense of good and bad, whether we are educated or not. We know whether we are being accountable or not, whether we are saying the truth or whether we are covering it with a fine white lie. We know it. Who knows it? Who knows it? Because Atman or self is akarta. It doesn't do anything. Who knows it? It is your own ego, which is lying on one end, is experiencing the pain on the other end. See, that's the thing. So dharma is, so the more we purify the outer ego and the more the inner ego starts guiding our ship, we naturally become compassionate. We naturally want to speak the truth. We naturally become accountable. We naturally want to uphold our roles, our duties, expectations from us. We become integrated with society. We experience responsibility. For example, maybe when I was 6-year-old or even 9-year-old, somebody had to remind me, Baba's calling you, or, Baba is waiting. It's 6:30 a.m. Where are you? He's sitting down for his first class. Run! And, it only happened a few times, but I would run, helter-skelter, because if you are 2 minutes late, you're not in the class, probably. That's just the rules back then. So, you look like, yeah, I made it. But there is no Baba to tell me, Shunya, it's 7 a.m., show up. I'm showing up, right? For Baba, for my teacher, for my inner teacher. So this is the call of dharma. Dharma is what upholds you. And because of you upholding you, the whole society is anchored through you. And imagine a society. Imagine a society if everybody was upholding their dharma, just hypothetically. Mothers, fathers, teachers, engineers, artists, everybody. Husband towards wife, wife towards husband. Would there be any crime? Would there be any sorrow? Would there be any emotional abuse? No. And actually, back then, when this Bhagavad Gita was composed, it's a whole chronicle on dharma. Everybody lived by dharma, literally. And for that, you have to go back to the Mahabharata. Each character self-edits and audits their behavior and even punishes themselves, which is known as prashchitta. They self-punish themselves when they know that they have violated dharma. So you don't need like dharma cops. You don't need anybody reminding us and, shaming us. The conscience was active. And what has happened in the modern society is, yes, we don't want shame, but we don't even experience guilt nowadays. Our inner conscience has become so covered up with our vasanas, our compulsions, our desires, our lust, our ignorance, and all the modern messages that we don't even feel the pain when we lie, when we pretend, when we post things on the social media that have no relevance to our life. We're just, I also have a social media, so I'm not pointing anything to you. I'm talking about just how we've become. We have an outer veneer and we start living there. and our conscience is pricking us. But if it doesn't prick us, then we become the evil Duryodhana. Then we are lost. And when the conscience stops pricking us, that's when we have the evil perpetrators. And even then, Lord Krishna, we'll come across a verse when he says, there is no evil. Evilness is only when we don't live up to our truth. That's the only sin. And so hate the sin, but not the sinner. This is a classic, we say, this is from Bhagavad Gita. So, even the extreme sinner, even Duryodhana at the most, has ultimately forgotten who he is. That's the tragedy that we all have. And then the ego, becomes either aggressive, as in the case of the evil Duryodhana, or it becomes a victim, as in the case of Arjuna. So first, Lord Krishna gave spiritual teachings, and he'll continue giving more and more dharma teachings. But in these 3 verses, he reminds him, he knocks his conscience. And by Lord Krishna knocking Arjuna's conscience, that this is your Swadharma. These are your contracts to you. Swadharma is not even a contract to anybody else, because that we will study later. Swadharma is a contract to be you. And when we don't be you, when we don't be us, we're not authentic. And when we are not authentic, then we hear from what happens 34 to 37, what happens? It causes apyasha. People criticize us, we feel ashamed, we suffer. We create our own sorrow. So every time Lord Krishna is knocking on the door of Arjuna's heart, really, you should allow Krishna through Arjuna, our beloved Arjuna, who's our face. Everybody is Arjuna. And the transformation that happens for the Arjuna is, but this is the beauty, that Arjuna keeps asking amazing questions because he's really understanding. If Arjuna was not receiving, if he was not asking the question, if he was not expressing his doubts, we couldn't have had the Gita. Lord would have just stopped at verse 30. After all, he taught the ultimate philosophy. But then from 31 to 33, we have Swadharma. And then from verse 34 to, 37, we will see Laukika logic. Laukika means worldly logic. What will the people say? What will your friends think about you? That's how I also behave when I have to counsel people. Sometimes I have to say, you are Atman, you have deep infinite potential. Then I remind them, look, this is what are your contracts to yourselves. And at the end, when I have to say, and imagine what loss of credibility you're having, or what it will, what will other people say about you. So this is how a teacher is working, really, to awaken the inner conscience to take over. And then the right thing gets done. So now with this background, I shall chant to you verse 31 to 33, and then I shall, then we shall move over to to chapter 18. So verse 31. Swadharma apicha viksha na vikampitum arhasi dharmadiyuttat shriyunyat kshatriyasya na vidyate yadracha chopannam sargadvaram apavritam sukhina kshatriya partha labhante yuddhamidrisham atha chetva mimam dharmyam sangramam na karishyasi tata swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam vapsyasi. So what is Lord saying? After giving him the highest message, this kind guru is not giving up on his student, because he understands that self-ignorance can be quite self-ignorance can be very tenacious. It can be very deep. And so he's now reminding him about his swadharma. And he says in verse 31, he says, further, looking at your own swadharma, looking at your own, swa means self, dharma means duty towards you, your duty towards you to act in a certain way. Looking at your own swadharma, you ought not to waver. So waver in like, should I go to war? Should I not go to war? For there is nothing higher for a kshatriya. Kshatriya means a warrior class, a class of people who have taken a vow to protect us, than a righteous war. So, righteous war is important. This is an important word. It's not the word for war is yuddha. And righteousness means dharma. So this war, he's saying in this verse here, Lord Krishna says, it's a dharma yuddha. So we are not asked to be quarreling, nagging people who just pick up random battles and fight them and try to prove a point. No. When after due deliberation, it has now understood that it's a dharma yuddha. When you go to this war, you are going to end up protecting dharma, because you would have killed that being who is trying to destroy dharma, because he's violating, the rights of women and of all kinds of people, and he's molesting openly, and it's just a tyrannical being. So, this is a dharma yuddha. So how many times do you get a chance to fight a righteous war? Now, I can explain to you that I avoid war. My nature is I'm not a warrior, number one, so I should avoid war. And but 2-3 times in my life, I have had to, not war, I've not killed anyone, I've not slapped anyone, promise. But I've had to really be very strong, and I'd get really clear about it, because it was not a yuddha, it was not a war. I was not doing that for the sake of, for a petty ego victory. It was needed for the victory of dharma. So I can tell you that, in my own sphere of life, maybe twice in my life or 3 times, I have got the chance, the honor of defending dharma, in the public arena, at Vedika, in my home, in my pub life. And it has been just a privilege, and when you walk in there, not for your own petty, agenda, but for something larger, it feels like you are being supported by something larger. And so this is what Lord says to me. He reminds him, look, you're a kshatriya. And there is a K there, and it is pronounced. It's not a sleeping K, so it's kshatriya. So then the next verse is, happy indeed are the kshatriyas, O Partha. Partha means son of Pritha. This is the way he calls Arjuna, who are called to fight in such a battle that comes of itself as an open door to heaven. And so what is this heaven? Heaven here is, so this is different from the biblical heaven and hell, where, you go there based on, you go there based on how you behaved, I believe. But here what happens is, heaven and hell is really a word. Swargam is a word which, you are here, right? You are in this loka, this sphere of existence called Prithvi, earth. And over here, you can see that you have half happiness, half sorrow, half morning, half night. Everything is half. Would you agree? Can I see hands? Everything is half, right? In Swarga, you will get not half. You will get a lot of something good. So just like you are in this experience, as you know, you are an undying being, you're having this experience. When you protect dharma, for a while there, your life will become, in some future life, you might not have to come back on earth. You could have another body in some kind of a amazing experience, but it shall also end. So the difference between a biblical heaven and hell, which is forever, and then God grants you some, sorry, I'm not very clear on that process, but I believe you don't travel around in the biblical experience. But here, your ego keeps experiencing new and new stories, just like at night, you experience a new story. And at death, you experience a new story. But if in this life you get a chance to live up for dharma, because dharma is that it protects maximum number of beings. It protects the earth, it protects the planet, it protects the birds and animals who can't protect themselves, because when there is a holocaust that Duryodhana wanted to do, then everything ends. So when you protect the earth, you accrue a lot of punyam, a good merit, good karma, and so you will get a pass to heaven, which the word is heaven, but we can use the Sanskrit word which means swarga, and swarga here means unalloyed experience of happiness. That's what it means. And so, and so most soldiers, would love. I'm proud to tell you that right now the most senior, I don't know his title, but the first person in the Indian Army is my brother, is my first cousin. I'm so proud of him, and he's only a few years older to me. And he had told me when he was only 22 that he wants to die for his nation, if he gets a chance. And he has been to all kinds of deployment for United Nations and whatnot. He has taken all kinds of bullets. So he's a really powerful being. And for him to be recognized as the most important person is due, because he has got, which we will study later, he has got swargam. He's getting a lot of happiness, but not from a self. He didn't manipulate his way. He was protecting dharma, and dharma protects you, and you get happiness as a result. When we try to manipulate for our little ego, we get little bits of pleasure, but then we get lots of sorrow. When we protect dharma, when we stand up for dharma, we get a lot of difficulty in the beginning, but then we get a lot of unalloyed joy. So that's the nature of this loka, where pain, which is voluntary, taken up, such as seva, dharma, etc., they bring joy. And when we seek joy, our ego takes over and we suffer. And in this case, Arjuna was seeking his ego's happiness. He wanted to run away. So this is the second piece. You'll get swarga. Swarga, and you can get swarga kind of experience even on earth. I can tell you that my own life, since I just became a source of, dharma more than my own aham, my life has changed 500%, from mixed sorrow and joy to more serenity and joy. So he's saying, come on, people die for such an opportunity. Like my brother, he was waiting for such an opportunity. Some of you may be confused, I use the word brother, but in India, we don't say cousins. See, the thing is, anybody who lives in your village also is your brother. So we are like those kind of people, like the Italians, I guess, in your end of the world. But he is my maternal uncle's son. Anyway, so then the third one is, but if you will not fight this righteous war, then having abandoned, because you're abandoning your own duty, and you're abandoning, he says another word is kirti, your own fame, then you shall incur sin. So the thing is that when you do your duty, when you do your certain dharma, when you're meeting your swadharma, certain amount of this world fame is meant to come to you, which you prevent from coming. And that fame is nothing but the luster of the supreme reality coming to you. Because whatever protects dharma, dharma protects. Because you have become part of the allness. You're not just a collapsed being. And the more collapsed we become, the more sorrowful we become, and the more expansive we become, the more joyful we become. That's just the law. And we'll explore more about these 4 types of swadharma, and then you can try to see, what can help you in your swadharma, identifying that. So he says that if you do not fight, so if you quit, if you abandon this, then you would have abandoned your duty and the fame that comes with it. And you shall incur sin. What is the sin? Like I said, there is no sin in the Vedic tradition. The only sin is that you will have voluntarily become ignorant. It's like you would have stuck your head under the sand and said, I don't know, I want to run away. In my own life, I agree that I was a little delayed in taking on my duty as an acharya, but anybody who knows me, like my father and other people, know that I was not delayed. I was preparing myself. In our Vedic culture, we don't just meet our guru for 1 year or 2 years, and then they give us an initiation, and then we shave our head and wear our clothes and become the next acharya. We really internalize the knowledge, and you wouldn't have wanted to be my student 20 years ago, I tell you. I mean, I might have been more impressive, maybe. I had more charge back then, but, and maybe I was more pleasant, but, more outwardly pleasant. But I'm inwardly pleasant and tranquil now. And it takes that time. And I knew that this was my duty. And if I had abandoned this, then I would have been, a very different person. And yes, I have accrued fame also. And even that is for me to receive as a blessing. It's almost like saying no to light and to blessing. So you do your duty, you flower. So a rose, I have roses, blossoming in my garden. And when they blossom, and when they throw out their aroma, which is their blossoming, then the bees shall come. And the bees shall come, and you cannot stop the bees. So this is the whole thing is happening by divine will. And when you stop that, so you don't step in your swadharma. Now, you may think, well, I'm not stepping into a lot of things. And probably it's because you might be stepping into what is not your swadharma. And because when you step into your swadharma, you shall find an ease. Your life shall become easier. So one of the biggest hints of whether you are pursuing your swadharma with your profession, with anything in life is, how do you feel? Because when you are aligned with your swadharma, and of course the Gita helps us figure it out, but ultimately it's a subjective conclusion. And we are a very unique lineage because we are a lineage of householder sages. It feels unique now, but that's how the Vedic people were. Our sage, our ancestor, Rishi Vashishta, was also married with children and all of that. So, I mean, most of the sages were either, married or they had love interest, etc. So, we live in the world. And so for me, for a while there, it was a bit when I had not put myself out there that, yes, this is my lineage. And I thought, I think maybe I can just be content being a healer. But healer is and some of you love my book and you love my healing abilities and you know all about my passion for Ayurveda. But really, even that swadharma is secondary, because if it had been my primary swadharma, I would still be only doing that. But teaching the Veda, living the Veda is my ultimate swadharma, and this is where I have maximum ease. So I'm speaking for myself because this is a new concept for you. So you could say, if I were to end my lecture here, you could wonder, what's my swadharma? And I can give you an example. For example, many of you know Sanjay ji. And for those who don't, for our guests, Sanjay is my life partner, and he's into the world of finance and, stock reporting and all of those things which I don't understand. But he loves to cook, and he's a teacher of Ayurveda, cuisine, healing cuisine at our wisdom school. And every day I get gourmet food, 2 times a day, and new recipes. And clearly, the joy he gets from cooking and healing, those foods and thinking of things is, showing his comfort zone. So it is around, there is a swadharma of, being a Vaidya, being a healer through food and through, lifestyle of herbs. And my partner belongs there, but he didn't know it. So that's why but once he married me, he discovered it. And he says that, wow, really meeting you was really my path to what I was meant to be doing. And probably that's, that you became a nimitt or a reason for me to find my own path. So once, a long time ago in ancient India, because the Vedic society was so organized, it wanted us to have minimal sorrow. It wanted us to be minimally confused. It wanted us to not have to, to try different professions, get unhappy with ourselves, and to not live authentically, Because ultimately, when we are peaceful, can we then submit ourselves to our teacher? And only then, when this angst around, what am I supposed to do? What am I, would have, should have, could have, when all that is calm, when we're like, when we're in our zone, then we can begin to know that, okay, this is what my ego is really pleased to do in the world. But this is aligned to something deeper within me. My conscience approves, my inner ego approves, my outer ego is happy, all is well, I'm calm, and I'm doing the right thing. And then I can, submit to deeper self-inquiry. Well, our hero here, Arjuna, had obviously, been one of the brightest stars of his teacher. And there are many stories in Mahabharata about his amazing, bow and arrow, archery skills and all of that. He had won many great battles. But was being a warrior, a kshatriya, a protector of the weak people, was he really aligned with his swadharma, or was he just thinking that just because he was, you're a prince, you can do that? Because he had 2 brothers among the 5. 2 of them, they were animal doctors. They loved animals. So they wrote manuscripts. They wrote samhitas on animal health, Ayurveda. So, different people do different things. So you don't have to be a soldier just because it's convenient. So now let us go deeper. So this is just the way Krishna talked to Arjuna. But now let us explore the 4 classical swadharmas that are taught by Bhagavad Gita. And for this, we are going to, you can turn to chapter 18, verse 41. And the word that is used for 4 classifications of 4 types of swadharmas, things people do. The word for that is varna, V-A-R-N-A, varna. And I will explain to you later that this varna concept is highly misunderstood. And the Hindu religion has been labeled for having caste system. And the Vedas have been ostracized for promoting caste system. But some of you have been studying the Veda, and you know that Veda promotes equality. And so this is also a great way for you to know what is the truth and what is the hype. And I shall come back to that. In fact, I shall also quote you some beautiful teachings from allied religions of Hinduism, which is of the Vedic tradition, which is Sikhism and Jainism, and even Lord Buddha. I didn't have the time to look him up, but everybody supports equality. And caste system was a foul derivative of what I'm about to teach you. And I hope you become ambassadors of this clarity to anybody you talk to, because it's a highly misunderstood concept, a very scientific concept that can help humanity. And I'm writing about it in my upcoming book so that people can really use the concept of Swadharma and really have more authentic journeys in their life, rather than due to confusion, and self-ignorance, and due to lack of information, inner and lack of intuition, we just, lead just wearing different caps and they're not sitting with us. So let me chant to you verse 41. Brahmana kshatriya visham shudradam cha parantapa karmani pravibhaktani svabhava prabhavair gunaihi. So what is verse 41 saying? So let me just open the text for verse 41. Okay. So verse 41 is saying that there are these four varnas. And these varnas are, one varna is known as Brahmana or Brahman, and this is different from Brahman, which means supreme reality. This is Brahmin, Brahmin, or the Sanskrit pronunciation is Brahmin, and this Brahmin seeks that supreme reality. So that's why it's a close sounding words. One is Brahmin, okay. One is Kshatriya. One is Kshatriya. Kshatriya, as you know, is the warrior type of personality. Then there is the Vaishya. There is a third one which relates with wealth. And the fourth one is Shudra, which relates with service. So these varnas have been introduced in verse 41. Okay, just 1 second. Okay. So now let me chant to you. Where just bear with me. Shloka 42. There it is. So now one by one, we are going to explore the tendencies or the personality or the characteristics of each of these varnas, each of these classes of one humanity, broken up into four classes based upon their swadharma, which may be described as propensity. And you can see and be really honest with yourself whether if that is your propensity. Because if it's not, I shall explain to you, and Lord Krishna says that we can lead a whole life deceiving ourselves when our freedom really lay in walking our own path. And I shall read to you from the Vedas how all four classes are equal. Not even one class is different from the other. And later Shudras, were considered like lowest. And this is all like, middle ages, not when all of this started. So I shall clarify that. So you will really feel good about this knowledge, and you'll feel good about hearing it from someone who is responsibly, through context, through giving you some verses, really presenting the whole truth to you, and then bringing it forward. I would also like to receive from the anchor students if a note, if any one of you or more of you, because we can have a couple of people opining on it, would be open to writing and publishing a few blogs on clarifying the concept of caste system in Bhagavad Gita. because that would be a service that you would do towards the scripture that you are studying, so that people don't see it in the bad light, Okay. So the first one is for Brahmin. And what is a Brahmin like? If you're a Brahmin, if that's your Swadharma, these are your tendencies. And just because you're in a Gurukulam doesn't mean that, because spiritual schools are famous for giving shelter to all kinds of confused, we don't know. So we have to find out. And so therefore, that doesn't mean that you are of this Varna. And so listen carefully, okay? Shamo damastapa shaucham shantir arjamevacha jnanam vijnanamastikyam brahma karma swabhavajam. So one tendency that somebody who has a Brahmin, Varna or a Brahmin Swadharma, is that there are three qualities in the mind. One is a pure quality called sattva, one is an agitating quality called rajas, and one is a concealing, blocking, dulling quality called tamas. And because we have some guests here today, I might just call them pure quality, agitating quality, and blocking quality of the mind. So if you are a Brahmin, Swadharma, then what is that the sattva quality will be more dominant in your mind, the purifying quality, the balancing quality, the calming quality, the tranquil quality, which is the three qualities coexist. So whenever we say somebody has sattva in their mind, we can't say that a Brahmin doesn't have the concealing, the disturbing qualities. We can't say that, but they are less in ratio. And the mind typically has a more, a tendency towards wanting to be more pure. It has a desire to be pure. It's not like it has to be asked to be pure. It wants to be pure. Okay, it wants to be pure. So Kshama here means that the Brahman, if you're a Brahmin, you want your mind to be not running towards the world. You will not naturally be comparing yourself to what others are doing. You will not be necessarily looking at others, looking here, looking there. You'll be more looking at, why is my mind agitated? Let me meditate. So there'll be a tendency to want to be, not carried away by the tumults and the temptation. It's an inborn tendency, in the sense that I'm not saying that everybody in the family has it, but it could be, it's what you've come in with, because sattva is your dominant nature, or you have cultivated it. You could cultivate it so some of you may have become like that, some of you may have been like that for a long time, even before you knew the word spiritual. And, so you will tend to seek solitude. Instead of seeking friends, you shall seek solitude. Instead of seeking to watch a movie, you might want to review your teacher's video. Instead of, reading somebody else's spiritual book, you might want to write your contemplation. So it's like because you are working with your own mind, and that's a tendency that a Brahmin Varna has. So that's the word Shama, the Dhamma. Dhamma is a tendency to want to control sense organs. And so a Brahmin Swadharma person will naturally not want to eat over delicious food, because they will feel like, oh, that's very nice, you cooked very delicious food, thank you, but this is, I don't want to indulge my tongue, so they have a tendency towards wanting to be the master of their senses. It's inbuilt. And then we have the third word is tapas. What is tapas? If half of our daily energy is caught up in what are the Jonases doing, what is this happening, what is that happening, what's happening in the world, so we're all caught up, so our senses are roaming here and there, our mind is, comparing and contrasting and, planning and thinking, or being upset or being happy, so it's very, in the world, it's very reactive. But in a Brahmin, what happens is there is a freeing up of mental energy because it is not so much roaming outside, it's very focused. So when it's focused, then what happens is that, an example is, say I give somebody Bhagavad Gita, then they will, look at every word, they will go and check, okay, what does this word mean? So they'll be focused in the spiritual things. So a lot of energy frees up. When that energy frees up, then they start channeling it towards like, okay, let me start a yoga practice. Let me watch my own thoughts. Let me control my speech. So tapas is a voluntary refinement that a person starts doing. Okay. And so this is known as tapas. And so there's an inner vitality, an inner energy or they might want to worship, or they might spend time, chanting, or they might do sandhya. It's an inward desire for all kinds. So Gayatri, sadhana, etc. that I teach, the people who take it up, keep up with it, there is a desire to do tapas. And you can only do tapas if you have a sense control, and you can have sense control if your mind is not constantly wanting to be of the world, in the world, to make a point in the world. Then they have a tendency towards shaucham. There is a natural tendency to be clean and pure in the environment. As sattva increases, one wants more and more cleanliness in the house, in your clothing, in your, one stops wearing, chemical things in the body. It's like, we are an Ayurvedic lineage, so you know all about it. But there is a tendency towards purity, and I believe I have a whole discourse on 5 types of shaucham, but there is a tendency to want pure food, pure friends, pure speech, especially pure body. So want lounge about in, yesterday's pajamas, etc. It's natural. Nobody has to tell. It's a desire. Change the flower on the altar. So these kind of things happen. And then finally, I love this one. It's called kshanti, or accommodation. It's a tendency towards being large-hearted. It's a tendency towards not holding grievances. It's an understanding that everybody is suffering. So they might, say no or yes, but the person doesn't get contorted or bitter, because there is a harmony, and it's not artificial. It keeps them light. Then there is straightforwardness, called arjavam. It's very important. I'm writing about these values in my book, but arjavam is, straightforwardness. One is not passive, one is not aggressive, one is not passive aggressive, one has direct communication. There is no hidden agenda. There is nothing spoken or unspoken. What is. It's a very straightforward. There is no cunningness or play here. It's a straightforward personality. What they say, they are. And there's a reliability there. And so this is one thing. And then in the next line, Lord talks about a tendency to seek jnanam. So the person, jnana, there are 2 words here, jnanam and vijnanam. So jnanam is what the teacher gives. So we receive it. We receive it. But it's rare in the Brahman only, it will turn into vijnanam, which means hearing everybody can do. But in the Brahman, the jnanam, what is heard, changes into vijnanam. What is heard is knowledge, and what is churned from within is wisdom. Do you see the difference? Because heard knowledge cannot help you. Heard knowledge gets forgotten in the moment. But a Brahman will convert heard knowledge into internal guidance. This is a tendency of the Brahman. So it's a very superior personality, and that is why we, in the Vedic times, nowadays we should not worship the Brahman. People say, I'm a Brahman because my dad is a Brahman. That has no meaning, and all the Brahmins are like, opening shops and, they are not Brahmins. They have nothing to do with Brahmins. So there's no such thing as genetic Brahman. It's like, it's a propensity. And when you find a rare person with that propensity, then they become worshipable to us. And then faith, if they don't have faith in God, if they don't have faith in scripture, then how will the heard knowledge convert to wisdom? Because they will stop hearing it, they will start questioning it. One will, without faith, that whole process, the cycle gets arrested. So let us count. We have kshama, mind control, sense control, austerity, tapas, purity, shaucham, accommodation, kshanti, straightforwardness, arjavam, conversion of listening to jnanam, so service of teacher, conversion of knowledge into wisdom, vijnanam, and finally shraddha. So 9 qualities. If you have these qualities, then I must talk to you about it. If you have these qualities honestly, genuinely, you shall find that meditating is a breeze. You know, you won't be struggling. Sadhana is a breeze for you. You shall find a relief by finding teachers like me. You shall be easy. You shall be, you might be, not just me, with any genuine spiritual path, you shall find it easy. In fact, being in this kind of, how many people do you meet in the mall and you say, so how's it going with your dhamma? How is it going with your sense control? And they go, yeah, it's going great. Nowadays I breathe from this nose and then take it out. How many people talk like that, right? It's like 0.1% people, 0.00 something percent. So these are very unique traits. And, this is in a Vedic setting. But say you were a Buddhist, tradition, then even the people who become the real lama, the real teachers, the real Buddhas or the Bodhisattvas have to be allowed to be that one. They should recognize that this is my propensity. So they are not really interested in going to war and, getting rid of the tyrannical person. That's not their job. Nor is it their job to, be like the Vaishyas and do, wealth increase, etc. They are truly, deeply interested in the quest of the supreme truth, which is within them. So this is a Vedic tradition. So we have Vedic lists, and that's what I can teach you. I'm not, authorized to teach you the Buddhist list or the Christian list, but in any deep spiritual tradition, we have that in Christianity, we have that in Buddhism, we have that in Sikhism, we have that in all kinds of paths, yoga path. There is going to be different kinds of people who come into it, but it's the Brahman Swadharma that should that will ideally grow into will be most happy there. Do you see my point? Now, if you have somebody who's the next one, say you have a Kshatriya like Arjuna asked to study to do all of this, even though he was given knowledge, he was a Kshatriya. Why? Because everybody deserves the knowledge. But probably what would happen is that when you hear this knowledge, the one who is most connected with this path, these tendencies, if they don't acknowledge it, and instead they say, I think I'll open a shop, okay? It's not going to make them happy. Would you agree? Yes? Hands? If they decide, I think I'll be a film actor. They could do it for a while because everybody said, oh, you're so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. But there is a chance that they might not be satisfied. And I have heard of some celebrities in completely different fields, then leaving everything to follow a teacher or take a path. So it's like a lot of time is wasted, So if we don't recognize our path, and it is connected to our sattva guna, So this is one thing. Is this helping you? Can I see hands? Because I want to make sure. Okay, thank you. Now let's go into the Kshatriya. They're all beautiful, by the way. So now let's go to the Kshatriya description, verse 42 in chapter 18. Shauryam tejo dhritir dakshyam yuddhe chapya palayanam danamishvara bhavascha shatram karma svabhavajam. So while the Brahmin Varna, Swadharma, is a protector of the Veda, a protector of the knowledge, the Kshatriya is a protector of earth, a protector of society. And their qualities are, I'm reading from my own writing here. The first one is Shaurya. Okay, the first one is Shauryam. And what is the other word? Shauryam and Tej. Shaurya means luster, okay, and Tej means brilliance. So they have a natural, they have physical vigor, constancy, strength. It's a physical strength. You can't really go in a battle and only have physical strength. You have to have tremendous psychological strength. It's a battle of nerves, so you have to, they're psychologically, mentally, physically, they have great ojas. They're really strong people. And so they do have both these qualities, Shauryam, prowess, and Teja, brilliance, boldness. And they are like, born leaders because of that. When I've heard that Napoleon Bonaparte, who was a great, French military leader, was once asked to, what is it called? Take the sheep out for grazing. He said, that's not my job. Because he was meant to be Napoleon Bonaparte, So sometimes, you're meant to do some things. So you're a leader. If you look at, for example, Nelson Mandela, he's also he protected the society. And if you look at, all the leaders that we have of, in the world, you could see that they are a class apart. And so they are born leaders and they don't have any questions about it. So there's a story that Baba had shared, which is very funny. So I'll share with you that, lion is considered the king of the jungle, right? But this lion was clearly not a Kshatriya because he didn't believe in his leadership. So every day he would, need reassurance. So he would, go out for a walk, and anybody he met, he would say, who's the king of the jungle? And the pig would say, you, sire. The squirrel would say, but you. And the dog would say, you. And, the snake would say, of course you. And so he felt good and he would come back. And this is part of his routine, just to make sure he's the king. One day he came across an elephant, and the elephant was busy eating. And so he asked, who's the king of the jungle? And, the elephant didn't answer. And he asked one or two more times, and then he kind of lost it. And he growled, and he said, who's the king of the jungle? He roared. So the elephant kind of stopped eating, looked at him, picked him up with his trunk, and threw him across the tree. So it's, okay. If you don't know the answer, just say it. Don't get irritated, will you? So this is how the difference between a Kshatriya. A Kshatriya, a true leader, will not ask. A true leader will act. And that's a Kshatriya. And, again, these are rare, but that's a Kshatriya. And they feel they are driven by, so one is the prowess and, Shauryam and Teja. Another quality is they have great fortitude, dhriti. Dhi, dhriti, smriti. Dhriti means ability to endure. It's not easy to take up any cause, whether it is apartheid, whether it is Black Lives Matter, whether it's equality to men, women, and gay people, whoever are the leaders, they don't give up. They don't, say, what about, I'm tired. They just go, go, go. There is just this fortitude in them, which is amazing. And it's inspiring, because sometimes the other people around them would say, I can't do this, but the true leader will say, yes, you can. And, and then they'll give a inspiring speech, and then they will, and we need those kind of people. The world needs it. And then there is daksham. Daksham means they are very prompt. They don't, procrastinate, because when it's about protection of lives, when, say you call 911 can say, yeah, we'll just finish our sandwich and come over. They're like, they have to start now, and if people who are protecting, certain important, places and countries and lands and rivers and buildings, they need to be prompt. And similarly, if we are, working over a polity issue or a cause, we have to be prompt. We can't be like, yeah, well, I'm feeling a little better. So it's daksham, Then another one is, and because of that promptness, because of all these other qualities, what Lord is saying is they don't leave the battle. So they don't leave things halfway, they complete it. And then the next word that's used is generosity. They're very generous. I mean, how many people would stand up for you? If there is one person, who stands up for a cause and everybody benefits from it, it's just a fact, So they're truly generous from their heart. And they have to be, because if they're small, then they'll be thinking about, oh, but my body will get hurt, but my mind will hurt. So you cannot be a Kshatriya if you have that. But if you are that person and you say, I'm just going to become a slave of what everybody will tell me, and I'll just be like, I don't know, I'll just be, I won't be the voice that makes a difference. Okay, how many of us zip up? I won't accept my power. I will not write that letter to the editor, because who am I to have an opinion? Let's just go back from the battleground to coming back to somebody who has an energy to stand up for society, for protection of earth. And we want to stand up, but we're like, no, but, good Spanish married women don't do this. It's like, okay, who made that law? And when I first got married, within the first 10 days, I was told, married women don't do this. And I'm like, oh, which scripture is that written? They didn't like that. So, the marriage didn't last. But the point is that just, it's like, if you're a Kshatriya, you have to accept. But many people, what I don't want to hear in my Gurukulam is, I'm a Kshatriya and I'm fighting for my ego. Kshatriya is standing up for what is cause. In some sense, I am also Kshatriya by holding the difficult terrain of Vedika Global, because I feel that I want to make a dent in the way Ayurveda, Yoga, and Vedanta is taught today. So, you can talk about it, you can complain to other people, or you can put up a role model. And so some of my students are like that. Do this. So it's like, if you're a Kshatriya, you make a difference, and you accept your power, and you don't keep asking people, who's the king of the jungle? Right. So now let's look at Vaishya. And in this verse 44, Lord talks about Vaishya and Shudra together, and he goes, Krishi go raksha vanijyam Vaishya karma swabhavajam Paricharyatmakam karma Shudrasyapi swabhavajam. Okay. So the functions, some of the things that Vaishyas like to do is krishi, farming, cow protection, trade and commerce, varnijam. These are some of the, understand the ancient and then we'll talk about the modern. In the ancient time, farming as well as trade and commerce was common. And even cow protection was done from a purpose of wealth. The whole energy of the Vaishya is around wealth protection. And it's very important because somebody has to produce wealth, resources, and they not only produce wealth, but they also circulate wealth. And when they produce and circulate wealth, such as food, such as dairy, such as medicines from the cow, ghee and all her body, her urine and everything is, even her stool is used as a fertilizer. So it's all a source of wealth. And, everybody gets nurtured. Even the Brahmin sitting there studying the Veda needs to eat food or needs ghee to even do their, fire rituals. We need the cows, we need the food, we need the trade. Even the shawl I'm wearing, I don't have an enterprise to make the shawl. Some Vaishya somewhere has made it. It has traded hands through different Vaishyas and it has reached me, as a gift. But somebody must have bought it to gift me. So the point is that very important role, and somebody has to do it. And so that is the role of the Vaishya. So in the modern time, Vaishya would be entrepreneurs, shopkeepers, industrialists, in the service and business sector, I would say. Clarity is needed because, say, a person with the Vaishya Swadharma, the internal propensity to trade, becomes a spiritual teacher, then there's a problem, no? What do you think? It's a problem. Similarly, when the Vaishya becomes our president, then also the government starts making profitable, lucrative contracts. We are seeing, no? So everything has a role. Similarly, if the teacher becomes the farmer, then also there is a problem because there will be nothing to eat. Because teacher would be meditating and probably they would water something, but they can't take up an enterprise. And if the Kshatriya decided to, probably if you told a Kshatriya, okay, can you handle my shop? It's okay, I'll help you out. But the moment somebody says, can I buy a packet, one soap? The Kshatriya is so lordly, say, hey, give that person a soap. They will just be like the army leader. They're leaders. So there is some hard work needed, and that hard work is put in by paricharyatmak karma shudrasyapi svabhavajanam. So there are actually maybe some 20% of humanity is broken up into Brahmin, Kshatriya and Vaishya. Maybe 30%. 70% people are then who? They are Shudra. We are Shudra when we are not leading that role, but when we are supporting a role. For example, either you protect the Veda or you support the person who's protecting the Veda. Either you protect the earth or you support the person who protects the earth. Either you protect and create wealth or you support and create the wealth. And Lord says, except that you may not be, this is equally important, that you may not be a Brahmin, you may not be a Kshatriya, and you are somebody, the Shudra comes from Shushrusha, somebody who can offer, this is all, they are indispensable because, say one person sets up a a potato farm, but 500 people are required now. There's one Vaishya who sets up a potato farm, and there are 500 more Shudras will be needed who will have a life, a job, a happiness, a status, a thank you when they do the right thing. They can have normal life, and they will be supporting that endeavor. Now, when we don't recognize that and see, at one time, it was understood that 70% of us may be not being asked by the Supreme Reality to do something extraordinary, not in terms of wow, extraordinary, but we have to do more. We might be allowed to just be in a supportive role in this life, and then in some other life, we may be in another role. Right now, the current climate is that everybody should be in the Ivy League college. Everybody should be making millions. Everybody should be writing a bestseller. Everybody should be, looking a certain way. So what we have done is we have created so much stress upon ourselves, because the bulk of us are simply here to live, flow, support, enjoy, have family life, rest, do our best. And when we don't do that, and we take on trying to be something or the something else or the something else, then we deeply, deeply suffer. I can give you an example from my own family. I shared with you one cousin who did very well. I have two more cousins, who, two of them, yeah. And they are related, blood. And one of them is a Kshatriya. And he, by his Swadharma, and he has, become a voice in India for many things. And he has represented India at the SARC summit and at United Nations. And, he's just been there, out there. But he's not just been lucky. It's who he is. And it takes effort. It takes hard work. He has a younger brother who has a job, has a wife, has a child, has a life, and a beautiful life. But he started becoming jealous of his other brother. So then he stopped talking to his brother. Then he gradually stopped talking to the whole family. Then he started getting upset with his own wife and his own child, and started emotionally and probably physically hurting them, because he started becoming dissatisfied with who he is. So I was asked to talk to him, because he's younger to me, and he is not so upset with him because he has not seen me, and I'm a distant cousin. So I thought I will just show up. And what I had to tell him was that he was missing his whole opportunity, because he was being gifted a beautiful life of restfulness, of where he could just go to his work 9 to 5, bring all his karma yoga and beautiful attitudes, and come home, enjoy his son. And instead he had spent his whole life being virulently jealous of his brother, who has high blood pressure and all kinds of problems, because he is who he is. And so everybody has their pros and cons, but when you meet the two people, the one who's walking his swadharma and has fame has not been working for that fame, so he is a very happy person, though he needed some Ayurveda herbs. Whereas the other person who had a lot of gifts happening to him, because a lot of things were working for him, but he was just not accepting his own flow. And so he was And this is where, when we go on, we will come back, and Lord Krishna says that what is it? The teaching is that, excuse me, he says, I want to give you the exact words. I think I should close here because it's 8:40. Then we'll just do some questions. He says, I have to look up that shloka, but basically Lord says that it's better to die, kind of, really suffer walking your own swadharma than pretending to be in somebody else's swadharma. Because you miss the whole invitation of your life. And you spend years and years trying to, be something or become something that you are not. And so now you can understand when Lord Krishna went to his student and said, it doesn't suit you to be like this because you're a kshatriya, and that you will get, you will incur sin. So with this, I'll stop here. Time does go by quickly, does it not? And I like to take my time teaching. So I'm opening the session up for questions. But before I do that, I just want to say, I do want to read something for you. Very important. Here is what the Veda does not deny anyone to read the Vedas. It doesn't, because people are now saying that Shudras and Vaishyas cannot read the Vedas. And many, many Gurukulams didn't allow Shudras and Vaishyas to be reading the Vedas, but our lineage, I'm very proud to say, has been open for shopkeepers and Vaishyas and everybody, farmers and everybody, to read the Vedas. Nowhere does the Veda say that the Shudras are inferior. In fact, let me just read to you from Ayurveda. It says, "O humans, I give to you this blissful knowledge of Vedas for all Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. This knowledge is to benefit everyone." So this is from Yajurveda. Atharva Veda, "I pray to God that, O God, that all Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishya, Shudra glorify me." Yajurveda, "O God, make me so gentle that all Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras have affection for me." Rigveda, "There is no one superior or inferior in the Veda. All are equal, just like brothers and sisters. All should help each other to attain the pleasure of this as well as other worlds." Again, the next births. And one more thing I wanted to read out to you. In Sikhism, there is a saying, a Sikh, a true Sikh, should be a Brahmin in their piety, a Kshatriya in their strength, in the defense of truth and of the oppressed, protecting the oppressed, a Vaishya in their business acumen and hard work, and a Shudra in their selfless service of humanity. This is so beautiful. And because Sikhism was really a sect of the Hinduism, and later it became its own tradition. And in Jainism also, I found one beautiful teaching which says that there is only one Varna, and that Varna is of the human Varna, but divisions must arise due to supporting the different propensities. So with that, closing, I want to say that this is a beautiful teaching, and I want you to sit with this and, and really deeply connect your outer and inner to really accept who you are. And then you can still study, but then you will not try to be something that you're not, and you'll know how much work you have to do, for something. Questions?
Arjuna has a question. Arjuna, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Shunyaji. Well, you just said something that kind of answered my question, which is that this follows so well from the talk about acceptance, and that accepting ourselves, is the responsibility, the sacred responsibility. And I was wondering earlier in English, And also in the Jewish tradition, there's something called birthright. And I always thought about it as something that you owned, it's your birthright, that you own this piece of land, or you inherit what your father gave you, or that kind of thing. But it seems like first of all, I don't know if there's something like that in Sanskrit and in what we're learning, but it sounds like what it is, if there is something like that, it's that it's a responsibility. And what you just said about the last few things that from the different traditions or the different scriptures was that part of the responsibility is first to who we are, but also to humanity and contribution. And then the last thing came up in another talk. I want to ask you about that, because you said just something very quickly before about you be and you become. And I always thought that is the order, rather than you become and you be and you become. So anyway, so all of that was stirring around. Thank you.
The questions were a bit confusing, Arjuna, but I see where you're coming from. So I'll try to answer, and maybe you can email me again, and then, because they sound important, because you've not had the time to, fully, think them through probably. But if you re-email me again, I'll answer you more. If I miss something, I apologize. But Varna is not just something you are born with. As your gunas change, as your mental qualities change, thank you for reminding me. So if your sattva increases, you genuinely start having a propensity towards the Brahman qualities. It's genuine. You don't just talk about it. It happens, okay? Some of it you might have noticed in your own self. Then when the rajas guna increases, then chances are that we start moving out towards the world. And if nothing else, we try to fix things out there, So it's more of a kshatriya and a vaishya quality. And a vaishya quality and the shudra quality is a mix of sattva, rajas, tamas, because it needs all of them. Yeah. And this is not the dark tamas I'm talking about. I'm just talking about tamas is needed, you need strength, you need a certain willingness to be in a certain place, because rajas keeps wanting to change things, So we actually need tamas in some sense, because it's like, okay, this is my role. I take the truck from this place to this place, and I do that, Rajas will want to question that, and, and sattva will want to study the trucking manual. So there's a difference here. I hope that helps, Arjuna. Regarding the be and becoming, I think this teaching is more like ordinary teaching. It's like it could be taught to people in the village without them having studied about Atma, So it's more about, here's how you can work with your rajas and align it a little more. So it's a little more, its dharma is a peg lower than moksha teachings. And I'm not sure if I'm answering you exactly, but probably it will help. Next question.
There doesn't appear to be any other questions right now.
Okay.
Aslam, go ahead. You can unmute.
Yes, my dear.
My question is how to discover our varna. Do we really need to make an effort to discover who we really are, what our dharma is?
It's very confusing nowadays.
Or we just go with the flow, go more inwards.
Go with the flow is a problem. Okay, you can go with the flow and you can go inwards, but probably this list will help you. For example, Aslam, the day you start really controlling your thoughts, which I believe you are, and you start wanting to do tapas genuinely, and you find that you are able to do it, and that's where your energy is genuinely, then you can say, okay, my Brahman work maybe, and you find that again and again, your energy is going there, because this is not just about 2 years ago, I was this varna, 3 years ago, I'm that varna. It's more like, what's your deepest Where do you maximally rest? Where does your ego most serve? Not your ego. Where do you serve the society? Okay. So nowadays it's very confusing because nobody talks about this stuff. And people say, I'm an engineer, but or my husband can say, I'm a finance guy, but he's really a chef. So it's all, and he didn't choose his career too. We come from a culture where parents choose your career, and here parents don't choose your culture, but then culture chooses your culture because it tells you, what's the better jobs, what are the better colleges. So right now, all I can say is you can sit with all this knowledge. You can't do it today. It's not a quiz. And please don't email me what's your Varna, because that's like, don't do that. Sit with this knowledge, because here is another mirror for you, my child, to be more honest with yourself and to walk even a deeper path, And if you find that you are somebody who's probably not any of those three, but the fourth one, then give yourself a break. Maybe you've done the stuff in the other lives. It's a continuous story, and then accept yourself there, because all four are beautiful.
Thank you.
I think Vidya and...
Well, we've got a couple other questions. Shreyas
Okay.
has a question. He's got his hand raised, so go
Okay.
ahead, Shreyas. Can you unmute yourself, please?
I was very excited for these teachings on Swadharma, so thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I loved what you were saying about guilt and shame. And I have a history of suffering from both of those, like I'm sure many people. But through going through studentship with you, I started to think of them both as just bad things that need to be cleared out. But something I'm taking away from tonight's lesson is the shame could just be negative self-talk that isn't helpful. But there could, I felt myself have sometimes guilt about something because I feel like I wasn't living up to my Swadharma.
Well, guilt is essential. Guilt is essential. Good.
Yeah, and it's like it feels like that specific type of guilt.
Yeah, specific. When it's the voice of your conscience.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to keep listening to that and accepting that voice.
Yeah.
Get more clarity on rest, what I know I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you.
Oh, welcome.
And Aparna?
Yes, Devi.
Dharma, I just wanted to encourage students that are interested in learning more about their Swadharma. We actually have quite a lot of teachings that you gave during the course of the Tattva Bodh, and they can also look in the Sadhana Chatushta book, The Starting Your Spiritual Path. If you go to the Uparama section, there's quite a lot on how to start that endeavor of figuring out your Swadharma based on Shunyaji's teachings. So, and you can go into a lot of that. So
Good.
Maybe support.
Vidya?
Jai I remember from a previous satsang that you had taught that sometimes some people have overlapping varnas. They may have Brahmin propensity, maybe a Kshatriya propensity as well. Or maybe I understood it wrong, I'm not sure. You could have two varnas act in you. The second thing is that sometimes and this is just how I feel, that to survive in this world, one may have to be a certain varna that they are not, or I feel like if I am a certain varna, but I have to be a certain other varna to survive in this world. But then how does one exist with conflicting varnas? Like you're doing something which you're probably not, but you have to survive in this world.
No, one doesn't survive. One psychologically dies doing all that.
Mm-hmm.
And, they could be two varnas, but something has to, ultimately your guna will decide which one. And I mentioned just now that I am also cause kind of driven, but my cause is more around Brahma Yajna. Ultimately mine is but I am also a householder, and I'm also a wife, and I also counsel two warring brothers and all of that, but I don't pretend to be anything else than I'm not. So if we are pretending to be anything else than we are not to survive in the society, it just shows that there is an ignorance here, and you are in the right classroom. And I know that in your case itself, you are pretending less and less. I mean, you're not the only one who pretends, right? We think the world is so big, right? And we don't know who we are. So we just try to please the world. And we should still please the world, but we should please it from a dharmic place and not from a place of fear. When we are true to who we are actually serving the world. So there is no conflict here. When I'm teaching Swadharma, I don't want you all having arguments with your significant other with your Swadharma swords. Swadharma means living to your own truth and stop pretending to your teacher and to yourself and to your spouse and to the world who you are. Accept who you are, and then you can begin from there. That's what I would say.
Thank you. This was helpful.
Yeah. And it takes a while to discover what is our deepest Swadharma. And also, as we, at least in the Vedic Gurukulam, we are Sattva farmers. So our goal is to change in just this school. If this was a warrior school, do you think I would want a Brahmin Varma from all of you? Tell me. No, I would want Kshatriya. And actually, Kshatriyas are asked to eat meat because, khichdi is not going to help on the battleground there. So there is a different reason for it's all very scientific. There is no superstition here. Okay, it's very clear. So when I say sattva is great, because that's the kind of thing you're doing in scripture. But sattva doesn't super support us. We need some sattva. Kshatriya is sattva plus lots of good, healthy rajas. And we need that, We need sattva everywhere. Even to drive the truck, we need sattva, right? And not be drunk and drive. But we need a special, pure kind of sattva to study scriptures. And one of the reasons we're studying Swadharma here, and I could have just taught you those 3 verses and then 20 years later taught you about Swadharma, because I have students who are confused about Swadharma. So I need you to be really clear, only then you can really, help yourself and help society. And also give yourself the credit for who you are. Really own it, Hope that helps you.
Yes, Shunya.
I believe that's it for questions.
Wonderful. And what wonderful timing, 8:58. Okay, great. So Melanie had a question. She doesn't have one now. Are we good, Melanie? Okay, great. All right. So we are going to sleep today knowing that we are not in charge of our body, mind, intellect. There is a supreme will, we have been studying about it, that is working through us. And if it wants us to do certain things, there are certain propensities within us that we should recognize. So, say you have a propensity to build a fashion boutique, or to start an art studio, or to start a cause against the dying trees of the Amazon, then you should honestly give expression to that, is what the Gita is saying. The final teaching that I couldn't complete today, but I don't want to leave without it, which I'll complete next time, is that don't wear another Swadharma and miss that bus. because all your teaching and your growth and your sukha dukkha experiences that shall turn into wisdom for you may happen when you are truly living that life. Most spiritual teachers in the world will tell you that your only dharma is to be a teacher, to be a spiritual student, to achieve moksha. But while you study about moksha, if you don't go to that forest and save that tree, if that is your inner propensity and you hide it, you shall have psychological complexes and you shall prevent the fame and the whole process from flowing towards you. So you are talking to somebody who was meant for what I am doing. So I am doing it. Question you have to ask yourself is, what are you meant to be doing while studying about moksha? Do you see my point? So don't, that is why in our household or lineage, we don't like shave all your heads and convert you all into monks. Because whether to be a monk or not may or may not be your swadharma. And so it may not be part of your life plan. Though you can study any spiritual path while following your swadharma. Do you see? So you have to discover what your instrument is being used for by God. So I know one student, Devin, here, because I just saw his artwork. And Devin has an art studio in New York, and I saw his artwork, and then I went to his website because he sent that to me, and he's just some beautiful work. And so this is what is flowing through him. And he is my student. If I ever, as a teacher, tell him to stop his art studio and just sit at my feet, then he should understand that I have violated the Veda. And there are countless traditions where a student walks in and never goes out, because you are now converted into a, cookie cutter dharma. Okay. Similarly, we may be born in a agricultural family and our parents says, become a cookie cutter agriculturalist. We are being told, explore your being, but once that's your dharma, don't run away from it like Arjuna. So if you're running away from it because you don't have the strength or the courage or then you are yourself holding your growth from happening. So Devin will if that is his swadharma, if he's an artist because his dad told him to be an artist, then he has to reconsider it. I don't know if Devin is online or not, but I'm speaking about him. So he has to reconsider it. But if it is his swadharma, then part of his whole process is going to happen through that. So and if your swadharma is moksha, if your swadharma is, spiritual learning, teaching, internal growth, then don't be in your art studio, right? Don't be in your art studio, but don't miss your Bhagavad Gita class for the art studio. So it's like, where is your Shakti hidden? And you have hints of it, and I have given you some hints. And then best wishes. Okay. And for those guests who made it through this late hour, best wishes for all of you also for hanging in there with us. This is a very deep class, and I enjoyed having you as a guest, and see you later. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace.